tablespoon of olive oil. If you want to use vegetable oil, as a matter of fact, use your favorite oil. It really doesn't matter. It's just I prefer to use, it's a preference thing, you know, olive oil, 1.5 tablespoons, medium flame. We've got onion, garlic. The garlic has been in the freezer. That is why it looks like that. Whenever I buy it in huge bulk, big containers, and just so they don't go bad on me, I put it in the freezer and then I thaw it out just before I start cooking. I'm going to turn my heat down to medium low, and we're going to let that go for about 3 minutes, just until everything softens up. After which I got some cumin seeds, and we call it jeera. That's just going to go in there. Oil is nice and warm still. And again, the heat is on medium low. We're not trying to burn anything, just to pull out maximum flavor. Speaking of which, I need some black pepper in there as well. Caribbean green seasoning is not only for meat dishes, it's for vegan and vegetarian dishes as well, especially in curries. It works great. And if you're new to Caribbean cooking, Caribbean green seasoning is a blend or a puree of all the herbs we like using in our dishes, along with garlic and seasoning peppers, aka pimento peppers. And I'm just gonna hit that with a nice little toast. And the base for my green seasoning is olive oil, so it maintains not only the vibrancy of the flavors of all those herbs, and I explain why on the recipe at caribbeanpot.com, so go over there, you're gonna see me explain that. It also helps to maintain that lovely color. Please, ladies and gentlemen, try not to buy the stuff in the stores. 99% of them is loaded with food coloring, and preservatives and all that. You can make it yourself. Now there, and I said 99% because I want to be clear, there are some good products on the market. It's just I might prefer to make my own. It is very simple, and it lasts for months in your fridge. Yeah, we're just going to give that another 2 minutes. With my heat still on medium low, I've got 2 tablespoons of curry powder, and use your favorite curry powder. Yeah, now if you're doing this gluten-free, please read the label of the curry powder. Sometimes they add filler in there, and yeah, read the label, make sure it's good to go, or make your own. It's else easy. The whole idea here is to sort of fry or wet toast the curry powder, which in turn allows all those spices which makes up that curry powder to bloom. I've got 3 what we call bird pepper, or some people call bird's eye pepper or chili pepper. I'm just going to remove the stems, and I'm just going to snap them in half and toss that in. This is totally optional. This is going to give the curry a lovely kick. But again, if heat is not your thing, you don't have to do this. Additionally, if you can't source those and all you have is habanero, scotch bonnet, or whatever, add in amounts that you can tolerate or handle. Your hands, I just broke it with my fingers. Wash it with soap and water immediately. You don't want to touch, you know what I'm talking about, nowhere, not even your eyes. Worse, you piggy. You don't want to do that. At this point, your kitchen should have the lovely aroma of a proper curry. You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to give this another minute. So after I added the curry powder in there, it's been 4.5 minutes. I'm going to get it another minute. If you find that it's a bit dry on the bottom, it's starting to stick, you can add another tablespoon of your favorite oil. Totally up to you. If you want to cut back on the amount of oil that you use in dishes, remember you can always use a non-stick pan, pot, whatever you want to call it. It's totally up to you. The bodi or bora or yard bean or snake bean, long bean, whatever you want to call it, it's been prepped. If you head over to youtube.com/foodfaq, I'll show you guys how to do it there. And basically what it is, you're going to trim off the stems, and then you're going to break it down into about 1.5 inch pieces or so. Give it a good wash, and that is it. I just turned my heat up to medium high, and at this point we're going to add all of that bodi or bora or yard bean or whatever you call it to the pot. Remember I said to wash it, and a little bit of water that remained in when you washed it will help to sort of deglaze the bottom of the pan here. Yeah, now remember I said bodi with aloo or potato, same thing. So of course we need to add the potato in here. Yo man, does it ever smell good in here. It takes me back to being a little fella on the islands. And you notice how I coated the bodi with, and you know, if you don't have bodi and you want to use string bean or French beans, you can do that. It's just the cook time will need to be adjusted. In goes the potato. Of course, we're gonna need salt, and you can adjust the salt later on. It's totally fine to do that. I'm just gonna go a little bit more salt in there. Give that a stir just to sort of coat the potato with the lovely curry we have on the bottom there. Now, if you wanted to add a little bit of anchor masala in here, you can do that. A little bit of ground masala. You can be as creative as you want, yeah? What I'm gonna do at this point now is maintain that heat, and we're gonna add water to be able to braise this, because remember, bodi can be a bit tough in my humble opinion. Plus we've got to cook the potato until it's nice and tender. For the most part, when mommy would make this dish for us, there was hardly ever any potato in there, because you know, for the most part, I said we grew our own bodi in the backyard. Oh, I probably didn't mention that, but we grew it in our backyard, so we always had a steady amount. But in my case here, when I cook, I usually freeze, so later on I can have more. So to stretch this for more, this is why I add the potato, and I find by adding the potato, that starch in there, it kind of combines everything nicely together. So in goes that water. We're gonna crank up the heat, put the lid on, bring it up to a boil. But I've got one more ingredient I want to go in there, and I find it adds a nice little sweetness, and yeah, you'll understand. But for now, we're bringing this up to a boil. It took about 4 minutes to come up to a boil. It's a bit too vigorous, so I'm going to turn the heat down to a rolling boil, and we're going to cook this until it's tender. Later on, as I said earlier, we will taste it for salt, but I've got one more ingredient I want to put in here, and you know, it's something I really like in curry. I guess I should be clear and say in vegetable curry, any sort of vegetable curry. I don't like coconut milk in my meat, like chicken and pork and beef and all that kind of stuff like that curry. However, and this is coconut cream, 1.5 tablespoons of coconut cream. I'm just going to top that down, and it's in a block. You'll find it in a block in your West Indian store, Asian store, Latino stores tend to have it as well. And all you need is about 1.5 tablespoons or so. It will, you know, you don't want a whole cup or 2 cups of coconut milk. While yes, you can do that, I find it changes the flavor too much. I just want that hint of coconut in there. I'm going to top that down. I'm going to reduce my flame and let that cook until everything is nice and tender. Later on, we will personalize things in 2 ways. And that is one, we'll taste and adjust the salt. And the second is, if you want any sauce or gravy in there. It's been about 27 minutes. Yeah, I had the lid on slightly ajar, so there's probably about 1/2 of an inch there or so. It's been 27 minutes or so. Here's where you're going to start personalizing things. And you notice I still have some sauce or gravy on the side here. Notice? You can decide whether you're going to burn that off or not. In my case, I know I have residual heat in this pot, which will certainly burn that off for me. And I am eating this with sada roti, so I know I need just a tiny bit of sauce or gravy. The other thing is, sup soldiers, listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me, email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pot. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie. Taste and adjust the salt to your liking. You want to make sure on the third sort of personalization. So the sauce or gravy, taste the salt, adjust it if it needs to be adjusted, and make sure, well, you can see the potatoes falling apart when it's fully cooked. The bodi is nice and soft. I tried it earlier. Chris here, CaribbeanPot.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. We just did an iconic, and I will use the word liberally with this dish because it's so good. And that hint of coconut milk in there is just add wonderful things to. You know, it just does nice things. Curry bodi with potato or bodi and aloo, whatever you comfortable calling it. I do hope you all get the opportunity to give this recipe a try. Irie, I'm going to shut off the stove before I end up with no sauce here, boy. That'll be trouble. Real trouble.